Good morning, everyone. We are here live with Andrea Honigsfeld to talk about her amazing new book, Growing Language and Literacy. So this morning we have myself, Katie Topple. I'm one of the co-founders of ELL Chat Book Club, and I'm a K-5 ELD specialist in Oregon. I'm coming at you right now from Central Oregon because we're on vacation. And then we also have Alicia. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Alicia Owen, and I'm currently working in Guangzhou, China at the American International School as an English language development specialist, and I teach middle school and high school and co-teach. So right now I'm on vacation in New Mexico, and so happy to join.
And
Andrea?
Thank you for joining us. We always feel so lucky to have you give us your time and attention. I think so far we've had a really awesome chat about your book. Everyone's loving it, and I really appreciate how you've been such an active participant as the author, commenting and just being present and reading everyone's tweets. Do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of what your inspiration was for this book? Because you've written so many, and this one's really unique. So tell us about kind of why you did this wonderful work.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me for this chat, as well as being featured on ELL Chat Book Club several times. I feel truly honored by that. This book, as you noticed, has a very different feel to it and definitely has a very different story about it. Just about all of my other books are co-authored, and a lot of them are about collaboration. So this is a true departure from that kind of theme or that line of research and publication. What I have done here actually responded to an invitation by my absolutely fabulous editor, Holly Kim Price at Heinemann, who shared with me that Heinemann did some focus group discussions around the country, that's around the United States, since we're international here. And they found that there is a lack of, teachers told Heinemann that there aren't enough books for them to truly understand what English learners can do. Something that would present an asset-based overview of the 5 levels of language proficiencies, and then how to address those 5 levels across the 4 domains: listening, speaking, reading, writing, and engaging English learners at the elementary and middle school level. So it's a K-8 book in a range of creative activities and learning opportunities that truly build their language and literacy. So that's how it came about. Originally, we called it differentiated instruction, but then as the book was emerging and expanding, as you, Katie, know, you have contributed so many wonderful stories. And another unique part of this book, of course, is that, as I just referred to, Katie is a contributor to this book. I reached out to my very big PLN, partially through Twitter and also locally or nationally, teachers that I have worked with. And I asked them to contribute by telling their success stories, an asset-based positive way of portraying this population. And the response was overwhelming. I literally had, just Katie, from you alone, over 300 photographs and work samples and activities that worked, and many others around the country. As you could probably see, the largest acknowledgement page ever that you can imagine, just the number of teachers who are listed right here. A big shout out to all of them on the acknowledgement page.
Yeah.
And the affirmation, yeah. You highlighted people that you knew.
Yep.
And to see their work come together. I think another very unique feature of this book, as Tan mentioned, this is Twitter in a book. So it's lots of photographs, lots of examples, and being given this opportunity to showcase the wonderful work of teachers and students in full color was such a treat that when Heinemann asked me to do it, I had to say yes. So that's the very long story. As you ask, how did this book come about, and why is it so different from all of my books?
And I love the way that it's arranged in, by language level. And one of the things is even just looking at the charts at the beginning of the chapter, where you go through the each kind of the different organizations and what they call those levels. That's just a great way to kind of broaden your own personal context to know kind of the greater picture of English learners across these different organizations. Because particularly interesting is at the end, well, I guess what we would call like a level 4 for ELPA, those students are considered proficient, and in other organizations, they would not exit at that level. So in my context, if a student gets 4s in all 4 of the domains, they're reclassified as a non-ELL, and then they're just monitored. But in other contexts, it helps to kind of know what else is out there beyond one's individual context. And I also love, I mean, one of the biggest, I think, struggles that I encounter with teachers is when a newcomer arrives and they don't know. They just are concerned about how can I, at 5th grade content help this student, or at 4th grade content, what can I do? And I think sometimes it's just because of a lack of truly understanding what a student at that level can do. And I love that it's bulleted out here and ideas of how a teacher can help that student. And it's not just, oh, well, if they're in kindergarten and they're at the emerging level, this is what they can do. It's on up through a student who's in middle school that Alicia might teach. It's not just at that basic level. It's truly kind of meeting them where they are, but getting a better understanding of what those students are capable of, and then how to help them. Like, I loved all the different suggestions for writing projects that really brought out, what the student brings and kind of personalizing it for students, because they're certainly not empty vessels. And I don't think that other teachers think that, but I just think that there's this kind of, I don't know how to help that student, and I'm worried about it. And this is such a great resource that you could say, read chapter 1 and you'll come away with tons of ideas of how you can support that student in your classroom.
Yes, thank you. And what I really appreciated about Alicia,
yeah, and
sorry? I was about to
Go
say,
ahead, Andrea, sorry.
I was about to say, Alicia, that you have posted so frequently on the book chat, and almost all the time you gave secondary examples of the same things that were in the book. And you further validated that what Katie just said, that we can always think about English learners at the lower proficiency levels as also lower grades, and appeal to that group of teachers and students who are working with beginner level English learners at the early childhood level, and think about appropriate learning activities for them. And your examples on Twitter are exceptional. I just absolutely loved, almost like an extension to the book. Like, okay, this is what you can now do at the high school level or secondary level. So thank you for that.
And I really
You're most welcome. It's a lot of fun. I was going to say to Andrea that I'm really happy to hear that. It's interesting to know that the original title was Differentiating Instruction. And I'm really happy that that was changed, because I think whenever that phrase is uttered, it's scary to people in my context, because they're all content specialists, and when they hear differentiated instruction, what they hear is, oh, I need to make another lesson plan. I need to do extra work. And so really a big part of my mission at my school is to really help teachers understand, how is it that you can create lessons that aren't adding on to your weekend time, but still meet the needs of all of our learners. And as you say, like in kids, in my context, we might have a newcomer who is 15 years old. And what do you do? And teachers who, particularly content area teachers who have not had any instruction during their teacher prep programs on teaching reading, for example, no background knowledge in teaching reading or literacy in general. And so it's a big step for many of our teachers, and really appreciate the way the book is laid out by levels, because I think I've already been kind of seeing, as I've been reading it, I've been thinking of particular teachers and particular students that I can go to a section and say, hey, take a look at this. And I agree with Katie's comment on, I guess it was Twitter, maybe a while back, you mentioned that chapter 4 was like, if you're reading nothing else in this book, read chapter 4. And as I was reading it, I was like, okay, I want to take chapter 2 every teacher that I work with.
I think what stood out to me about chapter 4 is, at least for me this year, those are the kids that were, I don't want to say stuck, but those were the kids that at the beginning of the year, I thought these kids are for sure going to exit, because they were 4s and 3s, and many of them had 4s and 5s in speaking and listening, but their reading and writing were 3s. And I thought, well, we can expect them to grow a level this year. And so I'm really confident that my 5th graders are going to exit, and none of them did. And I was like, ooh, and we worked really hard on writing, and we worked, I thought I did everything I could, but reading that chapter made me realize, one, this is a time when kids do plateau, and that it's not atypical for them not to just get that next level that next year. And so it wasn't necessarily something I did wrong, but it was just reflective of kind of the longevity of being in that level. You can get stuck or plateau. And also I loved reading about kind of the one-on-one conferencing and really supporting their autonomy, because I think that those are things where I do need to improve. I worked a lot this year on, creating kind of the unit outline and giving them their goals ahead of time so we could preview. And then as we went through the unit, we would take out that goal sheet and sometimes look back and see where we were, what we had done, what we were still working on. And at the end, I kind of dipped my toe into having them self-reflect, but it was just something that kind of was new to me doing, and it was new for them, and I hadn't asked them to do that before. And so having them kind of think back and score themselves on how they did towards these goals was just a challenging process. And so I would love to continue it, but it's something that, clearly we didn't get fully immersed in. And I just feel like with our limited 30 minutes, I don't tend to have them do a lot of things independently. And I need to work on that. And so it kind of became clear of how, when you have students at that more advanced level, but they're not quite proficient yet, particularly in reading and writing, what are some things that really work? And it seems like that one-on-one conferencing to really talk to them about, here's your strengths, here are the things that are going really well, and here are the things that we really need to work on, and this is what it will look like for you. I think that would be really helpful in the future.
Thank you. And let us know how it goes. I would really hope that this book really gets to a lot of teachers. I think we're doing well. Heinemann told me that the first print actually sold out, so they had to reprint the book already, which is wonderful. And the idea was that teachers who would just need an entry-level introductory book, but such a positive outlook on this population that they would dig deeper then into these practices, because obviously in a couple of hundred, I don't know how many pages this is, 170, 180 pages, you can't really give everything about English learners, but a cross-section of strategies. So I wanted for everybody to know that this is not to replace the WIDA descriptors. It's not to replace any kind of existing guidance document. It is more of a portraiture approach, giving voice to students, or they already have a voice, but amplifying their voices and showcasing them and sharing their successes through this book. I think we have lost Alicia. I don't see her.
Her internet may have been giving her trouble. I think, and one of the things that's great is, primarily amongst our chat, we have language specialists or instructional coaches or administrators kind of who are focused heavily on English learners, and that's kind of our lens. And we're learning from the book. But yet this book, I think you mentioned at some point, is truly for classroom teachers who may not have the expertise that kind of the people in our PLN, we do have a lot of expertise on helping English learners. So it's really wonderful and special that, if people who are experts in this field are learning from this book, clearly it's very informative. And then you take it back down to a classroom teacher who you can put it in their hands, and it's so richly informative, but also very user friendly. So, if the goal was to kind of start to differentiate for those students who are really beginners. They could look at chapter 1 and they could add some things to their lessons. And whatever they add for beginners or emerging level students is going to also support higher level students if it's visuals or if it's more comprehensible input. All of those things it's a layered effect that, like you mentioned in the book, it's not as if you're going to take all those things away. It's anything will benefit higher level speakers. They just may not need it, or they may not rely on it as much. But it could definitely be, we always talk about that with SciOp, that SciOp seems overwhelming. But if you start with one component in one class for one period of time, you're going to make some headway and you're going to learn and you're going to improve your instruction. And so if teachers kind of took it as one level at a time to focus on how can I really support my emerging level speakers, or not speakers, but emerging level English learners, and then use those strategies. And then, after a certain period of time, then maybe delve into kind of the developing or middle of the road, and then go to those students who are at that point of mostly proficient, but not quite demonstrating skills to exit. Over time, they're going to be able to add a lot of really good things to their teaching repertoire.
Absolutely.
And that's a few of my questions. I specifically ask people, what would you want to share with a colleague? Because that's kind of the goal, is that everyone who participated in the book chat shares with some colleagues and shows them what a great resource this is. And then it's that trickle down effect of, everyone kind of taking that ownership. Because I think it's intimidating sometimes when classroom teachers or content teachers just feel like they should know, but they just don't feel comfortable. And so that's where some of the hesitancy comes in. But this is such a great resource that really just makes it clear. Even if you just browse through the pictures, you'll come away with some great strategies.
That was one comment I got, that you very rarely get a picture book. Yet, the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, or just seeing is believing. All of those guiding principles were also present in creating this book, that sometimes teachers just truly need to see what the kids can do.
Mm-hmm.
And that the can do philosophy.
I think it's also really great that there is work from so many different teachers. I'll come out in a little bit, okay? We'll go tell Daddy. Go ask Grace for help then. Because I'm busy right now. I'll help you when I'm done. She wants snacks. I think it's great that it showcases the work of so many different teachers, because then it's not just, of course we love learning from experts and learning from authors, but it's not an intimidating, like, oh, well, this person has so many years of experience in the field. They're such an expert, but can I do that? And it's such a spectrum of teachers from different circumstances that are doing these things. So it makes it more user-friendly.
Yeah, thank you. That was definitely an important, some important guidance that I got, Heinemann. Actually, there was something, I will never forget this. This is what Holly told me when we were discussing this book. She said, I want to smell the classroom on every page. And the metaphor was so powerful. I'm just thinking of, when I look at it, that every page has either a story, an illustration, a photograph, a student work sample, or a template. So I know the book was contracted for 120 100 illustrations, and then it ended up being 120. And I was so afraid that they're going to cut the 20, and I didn't want to lose. I already had to be put through that very difficult process of eliminating some of the wonderful submissions that I got. Mm-hmm. And they allowed me to keep all 120 in the end. So that was wonderful. And that was the philosophy, that just not make working with this population intimidating or overwhelming. It is a huge task. It is a huge responsibility. But those are kids whose brains are wired for learning language, and who bring such assets and wonderful capacities with language and literacy and just knowing the world one way. And we have to just grow their language and literacy. So that's how the title came about, which we were very happy. As Alicia said earlier, you were happy that we got rid of the differentiated title and replaced it. And then the design team came up with this amazing idea to use the very natural colors and the leaves. I was totally, just so almost in tears when I saw what they were producing, and they sending me some early drafts, some PDFs, like, this is what it's going to look like. Yeah. So it was an exciting project, a very, very exciting. It was almost 2 years. You have to know this. That's something like that. As you know this, Kay, this is the first time I approached you about it, and that was a long, long time ago. So, yes. Alicia, you're back.
I think that the title. I'm back, and so I don't know what I missed.
But we can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh no.
I can't hear Alicia.
Uh-oh.
Do you want to try?
Oh no. Okay. Well, here I am.
I can share what she says for you, Andrea, if you can't hear.
I was just thinking that the title will really resonate with the content area teachers, because they often will remark to me how they will see a child stagnate, or plateau for quite a while, and then suddenly this growth appears, and it's always quite surprising to them. And I will have teachers even run into my classroom and say, hey, guess what so-and-so just did? And they talk about growth. And so I think that analogy that is run throughout the entire book is gonna resonate with all of them. I'm so excited to get back and share it with them.
So Andrea, she was talking about the title, and she said that she loves the title and kind of the focus on growth, because a lot of the teachers that she works with see students stagnate, and then all of a sudden there's this growth and they get so excited about it. And it's a really powerful kind of connection to what's going on with students, that there is so much potential for growth, and that it's such a good thing to focus on.
Yeah, thank you. So Alicia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
She can hear me, but I can't hear her. So I wonder what gets recorded if you're recording this, because I can't hear what Alicia is saying.
I don't know.
I don't know.
We'll find out.
And I don't see anything
afterwards.
Yes. Okay.
Hopefully, since I can hear both of you, everything is recording, because it's recording through my computer.
Fingers.
Okay.
So I'm hopeful that it will be okay. The other thing I really think is
one thing that I'm.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing I think is.
Well,
really
I was going to say that I think that.
You go.
Okay, I'm gonna go. Okay, I was thinking that one thing that was helpful for me, and I will be happy to share with teachers, and as we spread the good news about the book, is what do we look for in terms of students who are going to the next level? And maybe you talked about this already while I was off camera, so I apologize if I'm repeating, but to me, that was one of the most powerful things about the structure of the book, is that, because we never really quite know as a teacher. Katie, you alluded to this a minute ago, you're kind of wanting to hold on to the kids and support. And at what point do we just let them go and have more autonomy? And I thought the book did a really great job at giving very specific guidance about that. And also, it sort of, I think, helps teachers to feel like it's okay. It's okay to let kids, whether they're young or old, let them go forward, let them try it on their own. We're always there for them, but they should be trying to do things more independently. And that message came through loud and clear.
So, Andrea, Alicia was saying that because of the way the book is written, it's extremely helpful in kind of supporting teachers to know what to do next. So to really help to get students to that next level, because it's so clearly differentiated in the different language levels. So that's a great way for teachers to know, so that we can kind of continue to help them build their skills, but then also know when to give them that autonomy to be able to continue growing and developing their skills when they really need to go fly away on their own and not have so much direction from the teacher.
Thank you, Alicia.
What I was going to say is I really think that kind of just the way that the sections are laid out with the the bullets and even the different color on the page. It just makes it so accessible. And I particularly think that that's helpful in terms of the reading support and the writing support. So, you're looking at the chapter for emerging students, and I think it's more general knowledge that when we get a newcomer, we need to speak more slowly. We need to be really friendly with our expressions and use comprehensible input. Teachers know that if they have a student in their classroom that speaks that language, buddy them up. Use visuals. I think those things are kind of more common practice, but when it comes to reading and writing, those are the things or the areas where teachers just feel like there's too much of a jump between what kind of they've been doing in their classroom or what they're doing for kids who are kind of more of those higher level ELs, and it's very hard to know how to jump that gap and incorporate students who are very new to English in grade level content or in grade level reading. And that's one of the things that I think is kind of an area for growth for a lot of us is, okay, how do I work with that student who is in 8th grade and is a newcomer, and when I need to start teaching them reading? What are they going to know? Because there can be an assumption of, well, they just don't know anything, yet they may have language skills in their native language. And there's many things listed out that they can and should be able to do to give them access. So are they going to pick up the grade level book and read? No, not for a while. But there's lots of things that you can do to support them so that they can at least have access and can start to build those skills and start that. I mean, it's a long journey of development when you're learning to read in another language. I think that's something I try to remind myself. If I, went to Germany today or went to China today, my skills are going to be far from proficient for a long time. And when we worry about kind of the growth and maybe how slowly students grow or what it seems like is slow growth, we just need to keep that in mind, that a lot of things are happening, and it might not be noticeable or it might be kind of incremental, but there's so much that they have to do that there is a lot of growth happening. And then, like Alicia said, sometimes all of a sudden, bam, you felt one day like they just weren't getting it. And then the next day you're surprised at all of the skills that they can show.
Well, that was one idea behind the book, that those bulleted lists just give you lots of choices,
Mm-hmm.
but they're short, not very descriptive, just lots of ideas. However, a few critical ideas are introduced in each chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was my editor's guidance, that let's just go deeper rather than trying to give in each chapter 15, 20 different strategies. And then the teachers might feel like, okay, where do I even start? You might have noticed that there is a 3x3 kind of pattern, that typically 3 big ideas and then 3 subcomponents, not very rigidly, 3 or 4 concrete examples. So something that is manageable, something that is doable. Mm-hmm. So, but that goes along with the philosophy that you just mentioned, is where do I even start? Give me some ideas that are very doable, but at the same time, teachers appreciate it. They want choices.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, I think there was a lot on supporting emerging or being, was it the starting level? There was a big section on writing for starting level. And obviously that doesn't mean that you're only going to focus on that with your starting level students. You could clearly adapt those ideas and projects for any of the language levels, but then you just might incorporate and layer in some of the other ideas from the more advanced chapters. Like I love the page with the different writing opportunities. I mentioned that before, so an All About Me book. And I loved also how you mentioned Book Creator, because I just did my Virtual on Book Creator, and I think it's so fabulous. But a beginning level student might do a very simple Book Creator where they record their name and they add a picture of themselves, and maybe with teacher support can create a book that tells about them. But an early advanced, or there's so many names now, I don't even know. Like bridging level students, or even I'm trying to go with the names from your book, not from what I use myself. Bridging level students or expanding level students, they could also do a book creator about me, and it would just be a lot more complex. There would be more language, more of a combination of swirling, so they're writing more. Maybe they have more extensive directions or kind of points that you would want them to incorporate. And maybe there's more independence. With our starting level students, you're probably, holding their hand, so to speak, of really supporting them and giving them guidance and giving them step by step. And for those expanding and bridging level students, you're letting them roll with it and put more of themselves into it. And so you could have the same project, but just even the students themselves with what they're comfortable and capable of doing, then it kind of differentiates on its own to give more independence to those who can and to scaffold and support more for those who need it. But it's not as if as the teacher you're saying, okay, I have this totally separate project for my starting levels, this totally separate project for my developing. It could be the same overarching goal and project, but just different outcomes for those different levels.
Absolutely. A few times in the book, I mentioned that please don't think that these strategies only apply to these levels, but I didn't want to be repetitive. That really could have gone at the beginning and at the end of every single chapter. So that is, thank you for picking up on that strong message that while the strategies are organized or the teacher activities are organized by proficiency level, they really cut across multiple levels and context as well.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to mention how nicely this fits with reader-writer workshop and project-based learning, because being able to individualize instruction is something that
Typing it.
I work really hard on. I know my teachers work really hard on. And
typing in
fact, at the grade 8 level, we now are very excited to say that we offer every project for each quarter is done by the student's choice. So you're typing in what Alicia is saying? They all have the same standards they have to meet.
Keep going, Alicia. I'm just thinking that she can say.
But we're able now. Okay, perfect. Thank you for the assist. Yeah, we've developed the curriculum now for grade 8, which we're trying to use as a model for the other levels as well, but it's working pretty seamlessly now at grade 8, where it's all project-based. It's all student choice. They have the same expectations, but what level you are. But because of using the reader-writer workshop model, I and my co-teacher, we always get a chance to meet one-on-one with kids. And that's where I think the real refinement of the skills comes in. And I was glad that was emphasized. And I've been trying to sell that to a lot of teachers on campus, that this one-on-one conferencing is the way to go. It will cut down your reteaching time, your grading time, and more importantly, and most importantly, it's how kids learn best, I believe, is that immediate feedback one-on-one, particularly when they're learning language.
Sorry. Yeah, I think so too. And I think that it's one of the things that can be mind blowing is when, you have your way of doing things and then some professional development teaches you something great, but that you don't know how to do this with your information. And so it's really great when you can have a text that gives you ideas and gives you information that you can just seamlessly weave into the systems that you already have in place, because nobody wants to try and have to figure out, well, I can do this from this part, but then I have to do this. And it's just, that gets kind of tedious. When you can do that and you can see how it kind of easily meshes, that's such a good feeling of being able to add little bits and pieces to what you already have in place to make it better without having to kind of throw everything out and start with something entirely new. We're not very project-based. We have a specific curriculum for our pull-out instruction. We use National Geographic Reach, and so we have a unit about every 4 weeks that we cover. And so it's not very similar to what you just described, but yet there are elements that I could infuse that wouldn't completely blow up my curriculum that I'm having in place. And it might stretch out my pacing a little bit if I'm meeting with individual students one-to-one. And it might have to stretch my thinking in terms of, well, if I'm meeting one-to-one, what are the other students doing? But then it's really empowering them to do those things on their own and to give them those strategies to work through the text rather than reading it with them. You know, it's all things that will improve. And it's important to remember that, you know, if you're one-on-one conferencing and the rest of your class is going to hell in a handbasket, you can stop and have a little meeting and talk about, okay, well, what are the expectations for you working? I want you to do things independently, but there's expectations with that. Or maybe you've done a really good job of pre-teaching that. And so students can just kind of seamlessly work on their own, but it takes a little bit to figure that out. But I think there's so much benefit to having students have that autonomy. And what was the other word that you used, Andrea? I highlighted it in the question. It was autonomy and not empowerment.
Agency.
What was it?
Which is such a good word, because that's what we want, and that's what
It cut out. I couldn't hear it.
agency.
Agency. Oh, yes, yes.
So that's something that I often hear, that students will come to the pull-out small group and be talkative and participate and be happy, and then they go back to their classroom and they don't speak and they don't engage. And maybe it's because the class is bigger, or maybe it's because they just don't feel, it's not their comfort zone or something. But that piece of agency of teaching them skills so that when they go to that intimidating chemistry class or back to their 4th or 5th or 3rd grade classroom or whatever it is, in that kind of wider variety of peers who may not all be English learners, that they still have those skills to advocate for themselves when they don't understand, or to seek out a partner that can help them, or whatever it might be, but so that they're not only being really successful in that kind of only English learner environment. So that, and that's one of the reasons why I love co-teaching, because from the time they're in kindergarten, they're expected to swirl in the context of all of the kids, not just their English learner peers. And so I find that they're just seamlessly part of the classroom, and they know that talking and interacting is 100% expected. Versus when I taught kindergarten and I wasn't co-teaching and I didn't have as much knowledge about working with ELs, if they wanted to be quiet, I thought that was part of the deal. Like, oh, okay, I won't push them. I don't want to make them feel like they don't know what to do. And I've learned so much about how, no, you need to have that expectation there. So all of those pieces that help our students to develop that agency and feeling like they can do it, but that they know how to navigate when they have questions, is so important.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else from you, Alicia, that you loved about the book?
Yes, I from the time I started my career, which was quite a long time ago, and I think the first time I ever became aware of this was working with Spencer Kagan during the cooperative learning rollout years. This whole emphasis on metacognitive awareness was kind of coming in and being woven into those ideas at the time. And I've always seen how much metacognitive awareness helps kids grow their own skills. And so that's another big takeaway for me. It's something that I weave in a lot to my translanguaging practices. And so I was really happy to see it here as well. And I think that it's something that all of our content area teachers, grades 6 through 12, even if you just do a little bit more of it, you're going to push kids closer to autonomy and agency where we want them to be. Mm-hmm. So thank you for putting that part in there.
So I'm just typing that. Focusing on metacognition really pushes. Well, I guess I could just say it rather than typing it. Her last point was really focusing on metacognition pushes students towards that place of agency and autonomy, because they're able to really reflect on where they are. And that's something that I could see in my students when I started asking them to look at their list of language objectives and tell me how they did. You know, there's those kids who always kind of lowball, 2, 2, 2. And when I said, well, okay, then I started kind of just getting more organized as a teacher and giving them a folder, and all of the work that they did that aligned with those objectives would go into their folder. And then I would say, well, let's take this out and look at it. So your goal was to put the question and the answer strategy to answer in complete sentences. So here are your daily questions and your answers. Did you use PQA here? Yes. Did you use PQA here? Yes. Did you use it here? Yes. So tell me why that's a 2. You know, and then they think, and I say, from my perspective as the teacher, I think that's a 3 because every time you did it and you did it correctly. And so being able to kind of show them that is really powerful. But then it also brings in that one-on-one conferencing, because if I'm taking the time to go through that with one student, there has to be kind of a classroom setup so that the other kids are productively engaged while I'm doing that. Because with 30 minutes in a pull-out session, you can't have any wasted time. So that's something that I need to kind of think about more and figure out, to build in more one-on-one conferencing so that they can have that metacognitive practice of thinking about their learning and kind of how they've done and what they need to work on. And if these were the goals, what did you do really well? And what do you still want to keep as a goal? But then also building in those systems to make sure that the rest of my students are in a place where they can be autonomous to be productive during that time. And we also use that glow. I like to use the glow and grow, which I know I read it somewhere. And Andrea, I remember you told me that it's kind of just out there.
I put it in the co-teaching book to reflect on your glow and grow as you reflect on your co-taught lesson. So I think it's in one of my books, at least in one place.
Yeah, and I think it was definitely in something I read last summer. I want to say it was Stephanie Harvey's book. What was it? It's the most fantastic book. I can't think of the title right now, but it was anyway. But I like to use that language too to support students in creating goals. We sat down at the beginning of the year and looked at their ELPAS 21 scores and kind of talked about where they were and then where they could see they needed to grow. And that was kind of asking them to look and do that work of, I'm not going to tell you that your goal is speaking this year. I want you to look at your scores and figure out what your goal is. And, you know, maybe even if speaking was their lowest score, maybe their goal was that they really wanted to work on writing. So it has to be personalized, so that element of coaching is so powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for all the positive feedback and the interest that through ELL Chat Book Club you generated for this book. Heinemann noticed that, my colleagues at Molloy College noticed that, and it was just such an honor to see people are still responding, they're still participating, even if they're a few weeks behind.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just not be part of it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and so this is what day is today? Friday. I think today and tomorrow wrap up the chat, but people are still welcome to continue. That's the beauty of the slow chat, is that we'll continue to see the hashtag growing language and literacy popping up, and people can continue talking. I will use I don't know what it is, but Emily Francis for the PSYOP chat used some great tool that was able to compile all of the tweets for that whole chat. So I'm going to look into learning how to do that so that I can hopefully at least tweet it out, but possibly also add it to the blog post so that kind of everything from the chat is contained within that blog post, so people can continue looking at that and learning and tweeting about it, because it's such a great resource. And it's I gave my principal the copy that you sent, and I hope that it gets in the hands of more teachers at my school, because it's so wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both for this chat, for this opportunity. And
Yeah, it is so.
I'm sure that we're going to see each other on Twitter.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Alicia?
Yes. And you will see me continuing to tweet about this book, because I would say you will see a lot more of me trying to catch up with this book. I've been using the e-text since as we closed off the school year in China, and now I've been on the road in the States, and my paper copy was on back order, and it's at a friend's house right now, just sitting there waiting. So you'll see me with some more tweets about this, even though technically, as Katie says, we're done in a couple of days. I don't think we're going to be done with this book for a while. And I think because it is so user-friendly, and you're going to see it in the hands of a lot of teachers. And thank you so much for all of your work putting it together, and to all the collaborators. It's a beautiful text, and it's going to give us, reap dividends for years. I think it's one of those books that is so clearly laid out and so powerful that you're going to have teachers grabbing onto this for a long time. So thank you, and hope to see you soon.
I agree. And I think, I'm sure we all have extensive libraries, and there are some books that you read and they go on your shelf. And then there are some that you read and then they stay in your work bag or they stay on your desk because they're the ones that you have all the tabs and you want to keep going back to. And this is one of those that you keep readily available so that you can continue to go back and grab those ideas. And when you have that teacher who gets a newcomer and feels nervous, you say, hey, I'd love you to take a look at chapter 1 because this is going to give you some great ideas. Here, borrow my copy. There's some things to add. So yeah, I think it just will continue to be very popular.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time, and hopefully all of the audio and everything is good, and then I will post out the video so others can watch it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Thanks, Katie. Enjoy.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.